What's up, y'all? I'm Josh from Louisiana, and I want to thank you for tuning in to episode 4 of my recap of Feud, Capote versus the Swans. My apologies that this week's upload was late due to some technical difficulties. I had to take 2 swings at it, but at least I made it. Now, last week we began to peel back more layers of the Capote Basque expose, but also saw the impact Truman's decisions were beginning to have on him and his mental health. However, his inspiration is reinvigorated when he gets a visit from an old friend. Now, as a reminder to everyone, this is a recap in which I will be going through the key events of the episode. So, if you haven't watched yet, be aware that there are spoilers ahead. Hope y'all enjoy. Now, let's dive in. The episode opens with an enraged Babe reading Capote Basque, which exposes the secret, or not so secret, affairs of Bill. This inevitably leads to a fight between the two of them that is brought to an abrupt halt when Truman makes one of his many attempts to reach out to Babe. But it wouldn't be Babe who accepted the call. Bill answered the phone and, without even allowing Truman to speak, tells him he's finished. He might as well move to Patagonia and die. But I was curious, why Patagonia? Isn't Patagonia supposed to be really pretty? Why not banish him to somewhere a little more uncomfortable, like, I don't know, Monroeville, Alabama? Anyways, Truman is beginning to really reap what he's sown and sees that, I don't know, maybe he made a grave mistake by writing the story in the first place, and he begins to spiral. Drunk and emotionally distraught, Truman takes handfuls of pills in an attempt to unalive himself. An attempt that would be futile as he was awoken the next morning to a call from his friend James Baldwin, who asked to take him out to lunch. And where do they go? The scene of the crime, Capote Basque. Attempting to draw Truman out of his dark hovel, James appeals to his ego, talking about how important Truman is. But more importantly, James urges Truman to expose the darker secrets of the Swans. You see, when Truman wrote Capote Basque, he was targeting the men and exposing their dark sides. But the men weren't the only ones with the secrets to hide. No ma'am, the Swans had their own demons hiding below the surface. Apparently, Truman would help Babe pick out outfits for the men she would be sleeping with. Slim would parade lovers through her house in front of her husband. And according to Truman, they were all terrible mothers with eating disorders. He says that Babe, y'all know Babe, his precious Babe, who he loves more than all of them, is so preoccupied with her own life that she doesn't even see how she's ruining her kids' lives. Cut to a scene with Babe drunk at her daughter's birthday party, and she's pretty incoherent and asks her daughter to send everyone away as she goes upstairs to take a bath. But I don't know, honestly, if I had children, I think that would be a great use for them. You know, baby, daddy's tired. Can you just tell everybody to go home? I mean, no more long, awkward goodbyes. But anyways, in this scene, you could see just how unhappy Babe was as she crashed into the bathtub and breaks down. Regardless of how Truman continues to expose her reality, he makes yet another attempt to call Babe from the restaurant. Truman is obviously tortured by not having her in his life and tells her that he's at Capote and it's nothing without her, the food doesn't even taste good, and he never meant to hurt her. But what I don't understand is that even seeing how his actions have blown up his life, he continues to spread salacious gossip. If you were in that position, I mean, don't you think you'd want to lay low for a bit? I don't know, maybe zip your lip? So until Capote Basque, the Swans' ultimate threat was younger women, which in turn led to their obsession with, let's call it maintenance. Lee even told Truman that he was looking weathered and fat, said that he was on TV and was gaining more exposure than ever, so he should have a little work done, which, you know what, if you tell a gay man he doesn't look good, you might as well throw acid in his face. But we clearly see the effects of Truman's lifestyle and how his drinking has affected his health. And James knows that. He even tells him that he's the toughest gay man in town, but he's worried about what he's seeing. He tells him that it pains him to see Truman on television, showboating and incoherent. And James really feels like Truman is just wasting away, taking his talent down with him. Truman has spent his years with his Swans simply riding on their coattails, playing the court jester while he was showered in booze and drugs. And James tries to show Truman that, and by saying, blacks are the labor, gays are for the entertainment, and women are to look at. When Truman would go to Bill and Babe's parties, he wouldn't be allowed to invite Jack because that would be too much gay. Instead, he accepted the trade-off of being surrounded by straight white men of power who didn't actually care for him, so he could attend these lavish parties. But, I believe that in Truman's eyes, that meant he made it. Just the fact that he was included in these parties was enough to satisfy Truman, regardless of how he was actually treated. He tells James that his whole life has just been one tragedy after the other, and both life with them, his swans, and without them is unbearable. But he continues on, everything the swans do is skin deep. That's why they're not actually interesting. But if they're so uninteresting, why do you care that you're not hanging out with them anymore? I suppose not being surrounded by the glitz and glamour is more than a little off-putting for him. Once they wrap up their day gallivanting around the city, they head back to Truman's apartment. And James really starts to show his concerns about Truman's drinking. Though Truman agreed that he wouldn't have any more liquor, James hears him pop the top off the vodka bottle. He tells James, "I need vodka, I just do." To which James responds by throwing his drink at the wall. He tells Truman that he wasted 10 years since writing in cold blood with his sickness that he reeks of, saying that his torch is still lit, but he's working on limited time. It won't be long before his brain completely turns to mush and he has nothing left to give. In an attempt to reinvigorate him, James tells him that art is revenge and Capote Basque was just a chapter in the story. His real task now is to finish writing the whole thing, and he encourages Truman to expose everything he knows about the Swans. Finally, it seems like James was able to get through to Truman. After James leaves, Truman goes to bed, and for a brief moment, you see him look at his glass, considering pouring a drink, but he goes to bed. In his final farewell, James calls Truman to tell him a little story. He said that all the swans in England belong to the Queen. So technically, the Queen is the only one in the entire country that could legally eat a swan. And at first I was like, what is the point of this? But then Truman wakes up the next day and starts powering through the next great American novel. He calls Jack and says, "Jack, I've almost finished the book. If they thought Capote Basque was bad, they have no idea what's coming." And I thought, oh, okay, that's it. He's metaphorically going to eat up his swans, which, yes, I'm sure that's what he plans to do, but he also gets his favorite server who's in culinary school to come to his home and cook dinner for him. Truman had this man go to Central Park under the cover of darkness, kill a swan, and cook it for Truman. And I don't know why this made me gasp so much, but I was just so taken aback that I know swans can be mean as hell, but they're beautiful, majestic creatures. And you want someone to just go and slice one up and cook it for you? Man, I'm telling you, this show is just getting better and better. It does take a little getting used to all the flashbacks and flash forwards. So I so far have gone into each episode wondering what decade we're going to start in, but I am loving it. What are y'all's thoughts on this episode? Do you think Truman is embellishing these stories? I was actually shocked to hear that Babe was having affairs of her own. Do you think the Swans actually cared about Truman, or was he just the court jester there for entertainment? And I think most importantly, would you ever eat a swan? Anyways, drop a comment below and also let me know if there was anything I missed. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, and also follow me on Instagram at Josh from Louisiana. That's all for today, y'all. Can't wait for tonight's episode, but I'll be seeing y'all next week.